There is a certain kind of person whose mind never truly goes quiet. Not because they enjoy overthinking, but because they notice things other people never even see. A smile that fades a little too quickly. A voice that changes for just a second. A glance that lingers a fraction too long. A pause that doesn't quite feel natural. While everyone else lets those moments pass, your brain quietly collects every one of them. People often call this intuition. They say you're perceptive, emotionally intelligent, gifted at reading people. But psychology paints a very different picture. Because what feels like a gift on the outside often feels like a prison on the inside. Your brain isn't looking for drama. It's looking for patterns. And once it finds one, it refuses to stop until the puzzle is solved. That's why your mind keeps replaying conversations long after everyone else has forgotten them. That's why a tiny change in someone's behavior can stay with you for hours. And that's why just stop overthinking has never been advice that actually works. Welcome back to Mind Decoded. Today, we're uncovering the psychology of people who notice too much, why some brains become trapped in constant analysis, and most importantly, how to stop carrying emotional weight that was never yours in the first place. To understand this, we first have to understand how your brain learned to observe the world. For some people, the answer begins with biology. Their Reticular Activating System, or RAS, naturally directs their attention towards subtle changes that most people overlook. While most people hear words, your brain is comparing everything at once. Words, facial expressions, tone of voice, timing, body language, even emotional energy. Imagine an internal algorithm designed to detect inconsistency. Someone smiles and says, "I'm really happy you're here." But before they finish the sentence, your brain has already noticed the stiffness in their smile, the hesitation in their voice, and the breath they quietly held back. Immediately, one thought appears. Something doesn't match. This isn't a disorder. Research in evolutionary neuroscience suggests that roughly 15 to 20% of people naturally process the world this way. Their brains are simply wired to notice subtle changes that most people never consciously register. But biology is only half of the story. For many others, this heightened awareness wasn't something they were born with. It was something they learned. And that's where the psychology becomes even more interesting. Clinical psychology has a name for this: parentification. Instead of being emotionally cared for, the child slowly becomes responsible for caring for everyone else. They learn to read their mother's mood before asking for anything. They study their father's face before another argument begins. They become experts at predicting emotional storms because prediction feels safer than surprise. Observation is no longer a personality trait. It becomes a survival skill. Years later, the child grows up and leaves home. But the radar never switches off. They still walk into every room asking silent questions. Who's upset? Who's pretending? Who's carrying something they haven't said out loud? Without realizing it, they begin carrying emotional burdens that were never theirs to carry. When your brain processes the world this way, several experiences begin to appear. The first sign is what I call living a few seconds ahead of every conversation. Imagine watching a movie where the subtitles appear before the actors even speak. That's exactly what conversations feel like. You ask a coworker, "Do you want to grab coffee this weekend?" Before they answer, you've already noticed their shoulders tighten. Their eyes drift away. Their breathing changes. The subtitle has already appeared inside your mind. They don't want to go, but you still have to stand there, smiling politely, while they finish performing the explanation your brain predicted 10 seconds ago. "I'm sorry. Something came up this weekend." Not because you can read minds, but because your brain collected dozens of tiny signals before the words ever arrived. Living a few seconds ahead of every conversation sounds like a gift. In reality, it's one of the loneliest ways to experience people. Day after day, you're forced to pretend you don't already know what your mind quietly figured out long before the conversation caught up. The second sign is something psychologists often compare to emotional secondhand smoke. Think about what happens when someone lights a cigarette. They create the smoke, but everyone nearby ends up breathing it in. For people who notice too much, emotions work the same way. You step into an elevator. Nobody says a word. Everyone is staring at their phone. To everyone else, it's just another quiet ride. But your brain notices the clenched jaw of the person beside you, the restrained breathing of the person behind you, the invisible tension filling the space between them. 1 minute later, the elevator doors open. They walk away. Yet somehow, the heaviness stays with you. Your chest feels tighter. Your mood suddenly drops. Your nervous system reacts as if you had been part of an argument that never involved you. That's the hidden cost of heightened awareness. You aren't exhausted because life is harder. You're exhausted because your brain spends the entire day absorbing emotional signals that were never yours to process. The third sign is becoming the canary in the coal mine. Years ago, miners carried canaries underground because the birds sensed poisonous gas long before humans could. You often play the same role in relationships. You notice a friendship quietly falling apart before anyone else sees it. You recognize manipulation hiding behind charm. You sense dishonesty while everyone else is still impressed by appearances. So you warn people, but without obvious proof, they dismiss you. They say you're too sensitive, that you overthink, that you're imagining things. Months later, everything unfolds exactly the way your instincts predicted. And being right doesn't feel satisfying. It feels lonely, because you had to watch people walk toward a danger your mind detected long before anyone else. The fourth sign is becoming water inside a container. Water has no shape of its own. It becomes whatever holds it. People who notice too much often do the same. Around quiet people, you become quieter. Around energetic people, you match their excitement. With a difficult boss, you rewrite every message, rethink every emoji, and carefully avoid saying the wrong thing. Without realizing it, you begin editing yourself to keep everyone else comfortable. At first, it feels like empathy. Eventually, it feels like losing yourself. After adapting to everyone else's expectations, you're left with one unsettling question. Who am I when there's no one left to adjust to? The fifth sign is what I call the social hangover. Think of your brain like a computer. It can process an incredible amount of information, but eventually too many open files slow everything down. You spend an afternoon with friends. Everything goes well. But the moment you get home, your energy disappears. You don't want to talk. You don't want to look at your phone. You just want silence. Not because you're unhappy, because your brain is overloaded. All day long, it has been recording forced smiles, awkward pauses, hidden frustration, shifting moods, and countless emotional details nobody else even noticed. Now it needs quiet, simply to clear the noise. If these 5 signs sound familiar, you've probably spent years reading the smallest footnotes in everyone else's story. You know when someone needs comfort before they ask. You see pain hiding behind practiced smiles. You become the listener, the peacemaker, the emotional safe place everyone depends on. But here's the cruel paradox. You spend your life reading everyone else's story, yet almost no one ever learns to read yours. That's the loneliness of noticing too much. You see straight into other people's hidden struggles, while quietly wondering if anyone has ever looked just as deeply into yours. So how do you stop carrying a world that was never yours in the first place? Not by noticing less, but by carrying less. You can't stop a highly observant mind from seeing patterns, but you can choose what deserves your attention. The first step is separating observation from responsibility. The next time your radar tells you someone is struggling, simply acknowledge it. they're having a hard day. Then let it stop there. Not every emotion you notice is yours to fix. The second step is letting people carry the lessons that belong to them. Many highly observant people quietly believe, if I don't step in, everything will fall apart. But that's a burden you were never meant to carry. Speak your truth once. Then let people choose their own path. Some lessons can only be learned through experience. The moment you stop carrying everyone else's emotional weight, something changes. Your sensitivity doesn't disappear. It simply changes direction. You still notice what others miss. You simply stop carrying what was never yours. That's the difference between being drained by your sensitivity and living in harmony with it. There is nothing wrong with your mind. You simply experience the world in higher resolution than most people. You don't notice too much. You've simply been carrying too much for far too long. Which of these 5 signs costs you the most every day? Let us know in the comments. If this video helped you understand yourself a little better, consider sharing it with someone whose mind never seems to slow down. This is Mind Decoded. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.